The Invitation. The planet Sci-Fi 9 was unlike anything Captain Ryan Carter had ever seen. Towering trees with glowing blue leaves stretched into the dark purple sky. Strange creatures scurried through the underbrush, their eyes reflecting the soft golden light of the twin moons above. The air smelled fresh, almost sweet, and the ground pulsed faintly beneath his boots, as if the entire planet was alive. Ryan was a lone explorer, sent by the United Earth Federation to scout for resources and potential settlements. So far, the planet seemed peaceful, untouched by war or industry. But his instincts told him to stay alert. Peaceful places often hid dangerous secrets. As he made his way through the thick jungle, his scanner beeped. There was a life form nearby, humanoid. He gripped his sidearm and turned cautiously. A figure stepped out from the shadows. It was a woman, or at least she looked like one. Her skin was smooth and silvery, catching the moonlight in a way that made her glow. Her long black hair shimmered as if woven with strands of light. She wore a flowing garment made of soft, iridescent material that rippled as she moved. But the most striking thing about her was her eyes. Large, violet, and filled with something unreadable. Ryan took a step back, keeping his weapon lowered but ready. "You are not from here," the woman said softly. Her voice was melodic, almost hypnotic. Ryan nodded. "I come in peace. I'm an explorer." She tilted her head, studying him. Then, to his surprise, she smiled. "You are the first of your kind I have seen." Ryan hesitated. "You speak my language." "Yes. I have learned many things." She gestured towards a narrow path. "Come. You must be tired. I can offer you shelter." Ryan knew better than to trust a stranger, especially an alien one. But something about her seemed different. There was no hostility in her posture, no hidden weapons that he could see. If she wanted to harm him, she had plenty of chances already. Still, his gut told him something was off. "I appreciate the offer, but I should set up camp nearby," he said carefully. Her smile didn't fade. "The nights here can be dangerous. There are creatures in the dark that do not like outsiders. My home is safe." Ryan glanced at the darkening jungle. The sounds around him were changing. Low, guttural growls in the distance, clicking noises that made his skin crawl. He tightened his grip on his gun. "All right," he said. "Lead the way." The mysterious home. The alien woman led him deeper into the forest, where the trees grew taller and denser. Finally, they reached a clearing where a strange structure stood. It was unlike any building Ryan had ever seen, almost organic, as if grown from the ground itself. The walls pulsed faintly, like the planet's surface. There were no doors, just an opening that shifted as they approached, parting like living fabric. Ryan hesitated. "Is this alive?" he asked. She turned to him with that same unreadable expression. "It is my home." Something about the way she said it made his stomach twist, but he forced himself to stay calm. He stepped inside. The interior was warm and dimly lit, with walls that shimmered and moved slightly, as if breathing. Strange glowing plants grew along the edges, casting a soft blue light. In the center of the room, a table stood. Though it didn't look like any table Ryan had ever seen. It was smooth, glass-like, yet it shifted under his gaze, almost as if it responded to his presence. The woman gestured for him to sit. "You are safe here." Ryan lowered himself onto the strange seat, which adjusted beneath him, molding to his shape. His muscles tensed. He didn't like that. "Why are you helping me?" he asked, watching her carefully. She sat across from him, folding her hands. "I am curious about you." Ryan frowned. "Curious? You are different from the others." His pulse quickened. "Others?" She smiled again. But this time, there was something wrong about it. "The ones who came before you." A chill ran down Ryan's spine. "What happened to them?" he asked slowly. The alien woman didn't answer right away. She reached for a small object on the table, a silver sphere that pulsed faintly, just like the walls. She rolled it between her fingers, as if in thought. Then she looked up. "You should rest," she said softly. "Tomorrow, you will understand." Ryan's instincts screamed at him. Something was very, very wrong. But before he could react, the entrance behind him sealed shut. The hidden truth. Ryan leaped to his feet as the entrance behind him sealed shut. The organic walls of the alien home pulsed faintly, and for a brief moment, he swore he could hear something, a heartbeat. Not his own, but something deeper, embedded within the structure itself. He turned sharply to face the alien woman. Her violet eyes studied him, calm and unshaken, as if she had expected this reaction. "What did you just do?" Ryan demanded, his hand hovering over his sidearm. The woman tilted her head. "Nothing," she said smoothly. "The house reacts to its occupants. It knows when someone is afraid." Ryan clenched his jaw. That wasn't an answer. He took a step back, scanning the room for another exit, but the walls stretched seamlessly around them, as if the house had no doors at all. His mind raced. Had other humans really been here before? If so, where were they now? "You mentioned others," Ryan said carefully, forcing himself to stay composed. "What did you mean by that?" The alien woman didn't reply immediately. Instead, she stood and walked toward a panel on the wall. She touched it lightly, and the surface shifted, rippling like water. Slowly, a small compartment opened. Inside was something that made Ryan's stomach drop. A human helmet. It was old and dented, its visor cracked. The insignia of the United Earth Federation was barely visible beneath the dust. Ryan's blood ran cold. He took a slow step forward. "Where did you get this?" The woman turned to him, her expression still unreadable. "It was left behind," she said simply. Ryan felt a chill crawl up his spine. Left behind. That could mean a lot of things, and none of them were good. "Where is the person who wore this?" He pressed. She studied him for a long moment. Then, finally, she sighed. "Would you like to see?" Everything inside Ryan screamed no, but he couldn't ignore the mystery. If there had been humans here before him, he needed to know what happened to them. "Show me," he said. The alien woman gestured toward the far side of the room. The walls pulsed and then opened. A new passage formed, leading into the unknown. Ryan swallowed hard and followed her. The secret room. The corridor was narrow and dimly lit by soft, bioluminescent vines that grew along the walls. The air was different here, heavier, filled with an odd metallic scent. At the end of the passage, the alien woman stopped before another seamless wall. She placed her hand against it, and the surface melted away, revealing what lay beyond. Ryan stepped inside and froze. The room was vast and lined with strange pods, tall, transparent capsules filled with a thick, blue liquid. And inside those pods, humans. Ryan's breath caught in his throat. There were at least a dozen of them, floating motionlessly, their eyes closed, their bodies suspended as if in deep sleep. His pulse pounded in his ears. Were they dead? Alive? He rushed toward the nearest pod, his gloved hand pressing against the glass. The man inside looked young, his hair floating gently in the liquid, his face eerily peaceful. Ryan turned to the alien woman, his voice sharp. "What the hell is this?" "They are dreaming," she said softly. Ryan shook his head. "Dreaming?" She walked past him, touching the side of a pod. The liquid inside shifted, reacting to her touch. "Your kind is different from us," she explained. "We do not dream the way you do. We do not feel time the way you do. These humans are alive, but their minds are elsewhere." Ryan felt a wave of unease. Mind experiments. Cryosleep. Some kind of simulation. He had no idea what she meant, but he knew one thing. This wasn't natural. "Wake them up," he ordered. The alien woman shook her head. "They cannot wake. Not yet." Ryan's hand moved to his sidearm. "That's not your decision to make." She met his gaze, unfazed. "If you wake them now, they will die." Ryan hesitated, his fingers tightening around his weapon. "What do you mean?" he demanded. "Their minds are still traveling," she explained. "If you force them back before the journey is complete, they will never regain consciousness." Ryan's chest tightened. Was she telling the truth? Or was this some kind of elaborate lie? He looked back at the pods. There were too many questions, too many unknowns. How long had these people been here? How had they ended up in this state? And if what she said was true, where were their minds now? Ryan turned back to her, his voice firm. "I want answers. Now." The alien woman studied him for a long moment. Then, with a slow nod, she stepped forward and placed her hand on his temple. Before Ryan could react, a sharp pulse of energy shot through his skull. His vision blurred. His body felt weightless. And then, everything went black. Trapped in an alien's home. Darkness. A strange pulling sensation. Then, Ryan gasped as his eyes snapped open. His lungs burned as if he had been holding his breath for hours. He staggered back, gripping his head, his vision still spinning. His mind felt like it had been ripped from reality and shoved back into his body. The alien woman stood before him, watching calmly. "What the hell did you just do to me?" Ryan growled, his breath ragged. She didn't answer immediately. Instead, she turned toward the pods containing the floating humans. The liquid inside them shifted, rippling as if reacting to Ryan's presence. "You touched their minds," she finally said. "For a moment, you existed where they are." Ryan shook his head. "That." He gritted his teeth. "That wasn't normal. That wasn't a dream." It had felt real, like he had been somewhere else entirely. He tried to remember. There had been flashes, images that disappeared the moment he tried to focus on them. A feeling of weightlessness, as if he had been floating through time itself. The alien woman watched him with interest. "Now you understand," she said. Ryan straightened, his instincts screaming at him. He was not safe here. He needed to get out. He needed to report this. He turned toward the exit, only to find it had vanished. The walls, once open, had sealed shut again, leaving no visible way out. Ryan spun toward the alien woman, fury in his eyes. "Let me out." She tilted her head, almost as if she were amused. "You are not ready to leave yet." Ryan's fingers twitched toward his sidearm, but he hesitated. His training told him that firing on an unknown alien species in an enclosed space could be a death sentence. But at the same time, if she had no intention of letting him go, he wouldn't go down without a fight. The alien woman stepped closer. "I have questions." Ryan clenched his fists. "I don't care. I'm leaving." She ignored him. "What do humans fear most?" Ryan narrowed his eyes. Why was she asking that? She took another step forward. "What do you see when you dream?" Something about the way she said it made the hair on Ryan's arms stand on end. And then, the walls of the room began to change. A house that isn't a house. Ryan's breath caught in his throat as the alien home shifted around him. The smooth, organic walls twisted, their glowing veins pulsing in a slow, eerie rhythm. The pods containing the sleeping humans sank into the floor, vanishing completely. The air grew thicker, heavier, as if the entire structure was breathing. Ryan took a step back, his heart pounding. What is this place? The alien woman's eyes darkened. It is alive. Ryan shook his head. No, houses aren't alive. Buildings don't move. She smiled. Not where you come from. Ryan's grip tightened on his weapon. This wasn't a house. This was something else entirely. Something sentient. The walls, the floors, the ceilings, they were watching him. The air shifted. Then, the walls opened like a mouth. Ryan barely had time to react before a long, twisting tunnel formed right before his eyes. The path stretched into darkness, disappearing into the unknown. A deep, low sound rumbled from within. Ryan took a step back. He did not want to go in there. But the alien woman simply gestured toward the tunnel. "Now," she said, "we begin." Ryan tensed. Begin what? She gazed at him, calm and unshaken, as if the terror unfolding around them meant nothing. The trial. The trial. Before Ryan could react, the ground beneath his feet shifted. The entire room tilted, sending him sliding forward, straight into the tunnel. Ryan shouted as he tumbled down the smooth, pulsing corridor, the walls tightening around him, pushing him forward. He twisted, trying to grab onto anything, but the surface was too slick, too alive. It was as if the house itself was forcing him deeper inside. Then, he stopped. Ryan hit solid ground, landing in a new chamber. The tunnel behind him sealed shut, trapping him inside. The room was vast, its ceiling stretching into an endless black void. Strange floating symbols hovered in the air, glowing faintly. The walls were lined with mirrors, but when Ryan looked into them, he didn't see his reflection. Instead, he saw memories. His memories. Ryan's breath hitched. The first mirror showed him as a child, standing beside his father on Earth, staring up at the stars. He could hear his father's voice, distant but real. The next mirror showed him in training, running drills with his squad, laughing as they teased him. Then another, a battle. Fire, smoke, the sounds of his teammates screaming through his helmet as their ship was hit. Ryan stepped back, his pulse racing. How were they doing this? The alien woman's voice echoed through the room. "This place reflects your fears." Ryan turned sharply, but she wasn't there. He swallowed hard. "What do you want from me?" Her voice was soft. "I want to understand why humans fight." Ryan clenched his fists. "We fight to survive." "Do you?" The images around him shifted. The mirrors now showed different humans, soldiers, leaders, criminals, tyrants. Battles waged across planets, cities burned, empires fell. Ryan felt something cold settle in his chest. "You claim to be explorers," the alien woman's voice murmured. "But everywhere you go, you bring war." Ryan gritted his teeth. "That's not true." The alien woman finally appeared, stepping through the flickering images. "Then prove it." Ryan's breath was shallow. "How?" The mirrors shattered. The room plunged into darkness. And suddenly, Ryan wasn't alone anymore. A new figure stepped forward. A human figure. Ryan's stomach dropped. It was someone he knew. And they were staring right at him. The truth about her species. Ryan's breath came in short gasps as he stared at the figure before him. The darkness surrounding them seemed to throb, pulsing like a living thing. The person standing across from him was a human. But not just any human. Lieutenant Mark Harris. Ryan's stomach twisted. Mark was dead. He had seen him die on Kepler-22 bits 3 years ago, during an ambush. Ryan had been the last person to speak to him before his oxygen ran out. There was no way, he could be standing here now. And yet there he was. Mark took a step forward, his expression unreadable. "Ryan," he said. His voice was exactly the same as Ryan remembered. Steady, firm, just a little tired. Ryan swallowed hard. This wasn't real. It couldn't be. His gaze darted to the alien woman, who now stood calmly beside him, watching with those unnerving violet eyes. "What is this?" Ryan growled. She tilted her head. "Your mind created it." Ryan clenched his fists. No, this is you. This is something your kind is doing. What the hell are you?" She didn't react to his anger. Instead, she simply turned toward the ghostly figure of Mark. "Do you fear him?" Ryan felt his throat tighten. "No." Her eyes darkened slightly. "Then why do you hesitate?" Ryan had no answer. Mark took another step forward. His expression didn't change, but there was something off about him. The way he moved, too smooth, too calculated. "You left me behind," Mark said. Ryan flinched. He had spent 3 years trying to forget that moment, but he never could. Mark had been wounded. Their ship had been under attack. Ryan had tried to pull him toward the evacuation pod, but the oxygen levels had dropped too fast. Mark had shoved him into the pod and sealed it from the outside, saving Ryan's life at the cost of his own. And now, "You're not real," Ryan said, his voice rough. "You're not Mark." Mark stared at him for a long moment. Then, his lips curved into a small, knowing smile. The lights in the room flickered. And suddenly, the illusion shattered. Ryan gasped as the entire world around him twisted. The mirrors disappeared. The darkness peeled away, and the ground beneath him rippled like liquid. He stumbled, barely catching himself before falling to his knees. When he looked up, he was no longer in the chamber of illusions. He was back in the alien woman's home, sitting at the strange, shifting table. His breath was shaky. His body was drenched in sweat. Had it all been in his mind? He turned to the alien woman, who now sat across from him, completely unshaken. You did that," Ryan accused. His voice was hoarse. "You made me see him." She nodded. "I showed you what was already inside you." Ryan ran a hand down his face. He still felt the echo of what he had seen, the weight of Mark's stare. This wasn't just some advanced hallucination. It had felt real. Ryan exhaled sharply. "What are you? What is your species?" She studied him for a moment before finally answering. "We are called the Stalkish." Ryan had never heard of them. And what the hell was all that? Some kind of test. She tilted her head slightly. "A lesson." Ryan scoffed. "Lesson? On what?" Her violet eyes locked onto his. "On the truth. The secret purpose of the Dalkesh." The alien woman leaned forward, her silver skin shimmering under the dim light. "You believe you are the first human to come here," she said. Ryan's stomach dropped. "You mean there have been others?" She nodded. "Many, but none of them have left." Ryan tensed. "What happened to them?" She hesitated. They were given a choice. Ryan clenched his fists. What kind of choice? She reached out and placed her palm on the table. The smooth, shifting surface changed, revealing a holographic display. Ryan's breath caught as he saw dozens of human faces flash across the screen. Some looked confused, others terrified. All of them were wearing UEF uniforms. And then, one by one, they vanished. Ryan's blood ran cold. You killed them." The alien woman shook her head. "No." Ryan narrowed his eyes. "Then where are they?" She gazed at him with an almost sad expression. "They are with us now." Ryan's mind raced. What the hell does that mean? She exhaled softly. "The Xalkesh do not experience time as you do. We do not dream as you do. But humans," she paused. "Your minds are powerful. You can create, destroy, and reshape reality through thought alone. We needed to understand it." Ryan's pulse pounded in his ears. "You experimented on them." She shook her head. "No, we offered them a choice, a chance to transcend their limitations, to experience a universe beyond the physical. Most accepted." Ryan's hands tightened into fists, and those who didn't. The alien woman's expression darkened. They did not leave. Ryan shot to his feet, his chair scraping loudly against the floor. His mind was reeling. How many humans had come here? How many had simply disappeared into this dream world she described? And more importantly, what did they want from him? "I'm leaving," Ryan said, his voice hard. The alien woman didn't move. "You cannot." Ryan reached for his sidearm. "Watch me." She finally stood, her expression unreadable. "If you leave now, you will never know the full truth." Ryan hesitated for only a moment. Then, he turned and bolted for the exit. The escape attempt. He didn't care what the alien woman had to say anymore. He needed to get out of this place, and warn the UEF. But as soon as he reached the exit, The walls shifted. The doorway vanished, sealing him inside. Ryan cursed and whirled around, gun raised. "Let me out." The alien woman did not look afraid. Instead, she smiled. "You were chosen, Ryan Carter." Ryan's blood ran cold. "Chosen for what?" he growled. Her violet eyes gleamed. "You will see soon enough." Before Ryan could react, the floor beneath him vanished. He plunged into darkness. The escape plan. Ryan's scream was swallowed by the void as he fell into darkness. His arms flailed wildly, searching for something. Anything to grab onto. But the air was thick, almost liquid. His body plunged downward, the force pressing against his chest like he had been yanked into the depths of the ocean. Then suddenly, he stopped. Ryan gasped, his boots slamming against solid ground. His knees buckled, and he barely caught himself before falling. His vision blurred for a moment before slowly adjusting to his new surroundings. He was no longer in the alien woman's home. He was in a massive underground chamber, illuminated by strange, glowing roots that stretched along the walls and ceiling like pulsing veins. The air was humid, charged with a faint electrical hum that made his skin prickle. Ryan turned sharply, scanning for threats. Where was she? Where was the alien woman? Then he saw something that made his blood run cold. Across the room, rows of stasis pods lined the walls. Hundreds of them. Inside each pod was a human. Ryan's stomach twisted. He moved toward the nearest pod, wiping away the thin layer of condensation on the glass. A young woman was inside, her eyes closed, her face eerily calm. The blue liquid around her shimmered, tiny tendrils of energy dancing across her skin. Ryan's heartbeat hammered. The alien woman had told him the others had chosen this, but looking at them now, they didn't look like they had a choice. He turned sharply as a hissing noise filled the chamber. A door peeled open in the far wall. And then, a human figure stumbled through. Ryan tensed, his gun raised. "Who the hell are you?" The man stopped, panting hard. His uniform was torn and stained, his face hollow with exhaustion. He lifted his hands, shaking. "My name's Davis," he rasped. I don't know how long I've been here." Ryan's stomach clenched. "Are you with the UEF?" Davis swallowed hard and nodded. "Yeah, I was part of Expedition Team Delta 7. We landed here 6 months ago." His voice cracked. "We thought the aliens were peaceful. They took the others, put them in the pods." Ryan's grip on his weapon tightened. "Why? What are they doing to them?" Davis let out a shuddering breath. "They're connected to something. A network, a hive mind. The aliens don't dream like we do. They need us to do it for them. They trap humans in these pods and use their minds to fuel whatever the hell this place is." Ryan felt his pulse skyrocket. The alien woman had hinted at this, but hearing it from another human. ***, someone who had survived it. *** made it real. "We have to shut this place down," Ryan said. Davis shook his head. "You don't understand. The whole planet is alive. If you break the connection, it'll fight back." Ryan exhaled sharply. "Then we better be ready to fight." Forming the escape plan, Ryan turned toward the pods. If the aliens were keeping humans as some kind of mental fuel, there had to be a way to free them. "Is there a control system?" he asked. Davis hesitated, then nodded. "Yeah. The Salcash have a central interface, some kind of core that links them all together. If we overload it, we might be able to disrupt their hold on these people." Ryan's jaw tightened. "And where is it?" Davis paled. "Beneath us." Ryan's stomach clenched. He glanced at the floor, at the roots pulsing under his boots. "We need a way down," Ryan said. Davis pointed toward the far end of the chamber. "There's an access tunnel, but it's guarded. The Salcash won't let us near it without a fight." Ryan smirked. "Then we give them one." Davis hesitated. "Do you have weapons?" Ryan pulled out his sidearm. checking the charge. Enough to make an impression. Davis gave a weak chuckle. You remind me of my captain. His expression darkened. He didn't make it. Ryan didn't respond. There was no time for grief now. They had a mission. The descent into the hive. The two men moved swiftly, keeping low as they approached the access tunnel. The chamber was eerily silent, except for the constant hum of energy surrounding them. Ryan motioned for Davis to take cover behind a fallen support beam. Then they saw them. A group of Skalkish guards patrolled the tunnel entrance. Their silver bodies shimmered under the pulsing lights, their long, clawed fingers twitching as if sensing the disturbance in the air. Ryan took a slow breath. Stealth was no longer an option. Ready, he whispered. Davis gritted his teeth. Do it. Ryan fired first. The plasma bolt struck the nearest Zalkesh, sending it reeling backward. The others immediately turned, their violet eyes flaring with energy. Davis rushed forward, firing his own weapon. The tunnel erupted in chaos, energy blasts ricocheting off the walls. Ryan took down another alien, then spun, dodging an incoming strike. The Zalkesh weren't using traditional weapons. They were attacking with their minds. A sudden wave of dizziness slammed into Ryan. His vision blurred. For a moment, he saw flashes of memories that weren't his own. Other humans, trapped, dreaming, lost in endless illusions. Ryan gritted his teeth, fighting against the mental invasion. Keep moving, Davis shouted, shoving him forward. They barreled down the tunnel, leaving the wounded Zalkesh behind. Reaching the core, the tunnel led to a massive underground cavern. In the center of the room, an enormous organic structure pulsed with energy, the hive core. Ryan's breath hitched. It looked almost like a heart, with thick tendrils stretching out in every direction, connecting to the pods above. Davis pulled a small explosive charge from his belt. We take this out. We shut everything down. Ryan nodded. Do it. Davis set the charge, his hands shaking. We only get one shot at this. Then, a voice echoed through the chamber. You do not understand what you are doing. Ryan turned sharply. The alien woman stood in the doorway. You are making a mistake, she said softly. Ryan lifted his weapon. No, the mistake was trusting you. She stepped forward, her gaze filled with something Ryan didn't expect. Regret. You cannot stop what is already in motion, she whispered. Ryan's hand hovered over the detonator. Watch me. He pressed the button. A blinding explosion rocked the chamber. The hive core screamed, the entire cavern shaking violently. The glowing roots burned, their energy flickering and dying. The alien woman's face twisted in pain. You have doomed them all, she whispered. Ryan grabbed Davis and ran. Behind them, the planet itself began to awaken. The real enemy. The ground trembled beneath Ryan's boots as he sprinted through the collapsing tunnel. Behind him, the hive core burned, its tendrils writhing in agony as explosions tore through its pulsating veins. The entire planet screamed, a deep, resonating wail that wasn't just a sound. It was a feeling, vibrating inside his skull. Beside him, Davis stumbled, barely keeping up. His breaths came in ragged gasps, his face drenched in sweat. That, he panted, that wasn't just a power source. That thing was alive. Ryan didn't slow down. Keep moving. Behind them, the alien woman's voice echoed through the tunnels, though she was nowhere to be seen. You do not understand what you have done. Ryan gritted his teeth. He didn't care. Whatever that Zalkesh were doing to the humans in those pods, it had to stop. The tunnel ahead split into two paths, both shrouded in thick, bioluminescent mist. Which way? Davis shouted. Ryan pulled up his wrist scanner, but the signal was scrambled. Damn it. Then, a deep, inhuman growl rumbled through the passage. Ryan froze. That sound didn't come from the Zalkesh. Something else was down here. Something big. Something worse than the Zalkesh. Ryan pressed his back against the tunnel wall, his pulse pounding. Davis raised his weapon, scanning the mist. Then, a shadow moved. Not like the Talkesh, not smooth or humanoid. This thing was massive, its shape distorted by the fog, its limbs shifting unnaturally, as if it didn't belong in this world. Ryan held his breath. The Talkesh had never mentioned anything else living down here. Davis whispered, "What the hell is that?" Ryan had no answer. The creature emerged from the mist. It was monstrous, twisted and warped, like something from a nightmare. Its body was part organic, part machine, with metal plating fused into flesh. A dozen glowing eyes burned across its elongated skull, and its mouth was filled with rows of jagged needle-like teeth. Ryan's blood ran cold. Davis took a step back. "That's not a Xalkesh." The alien woman's voice echoed again, but this time it was filled with fear. "Run." The creature lunged. A desperate fight. Ryan barely had time to dodge as the beast's clawed appendage slammed into the tunnel floor, cracking the rock beneath them. He rolled, coming up on one knee, and fired his weapon. The plasma bolt struck the creature's chest, but instead of burning through, it absorbed the energy. Ryan cursed. "It's got a shield." Davis opened fire, but the creature barely flinched. Its eyes flared, and suddenly, a shockwave of raw energy exploded outward. Ryan and Davis were thrown backward, slamming into the tunnel walls. Ryan's vision blurred. His head rang. Through the haze, he saw the alien woman appear from the mist, standing between them and the creature. She raised her arms, her body glowing with that strange, silver light. "You were never meant to wake it," she shouted. Ryan forced himself up. "What is it?" The creature growled, its glowing eyes locking onto her. "It is what we feared," the alien woman said. Her voice was cold. "It is why we needed the humans." Ryan's heart skipped a beat. "You created that thing." She turned to him. "No, we kept it asleep. The human minds we connected to our network. It wasn't to harm them. It was to contain it." Ryan's stomach dropped. They hadn't just destroyed the Xalkesh hive. They had destroyed a prison. A new enemy awakens. The monstrous entity shifted, its many eyes flickering. The way it moved, it wasn't just alive. It was intelligent. It turned toward Ryan. Then it spoke. "You are free." The voice didn't come from its mouth. It came from inside Ryan's head. Davis gasped. Did it just? Ryan staggered, clutching his skull. The thing was inside his mind. "The dreamers are gone," the voice whispered, a sick, distorted sound. "And now I walk again." Ryan turned to the alien woman. "You said you needed humans to contain it," he said, his voice deadly. "What happens now that they're free?" Her face was grim. "It will consume everything." Ryan's blood went cold. Davis swore under his breath. "So we didn't just take down the Talkesh. We doomed the whole planet." The alien woman's gaze was dead serious. "Not just the planet. Your kind, my kind, everything in its path." The creature took another step forward. The ground cracked beneath its feet, and the air darkened as its presence seemed to spread like a disease. Ryan knew, without a doubt, that this thing wasn't just dangerous. It was a world ender. The last chance. Ryan turned to the alien woman. "How do we stop it?" She hesitated. Then, "We can't." Ryan grabbed her arm. "That's not an option." Her expression was unreadable. Then, after a long pause, she spoke. "There is one way." Ryan's pulse pounded. "Tell me." She met his gaze. "You must become its new warden." Ryan felt his throat go dry. Davis stepped forward. Wait. What the hell does that mean?" The alien woman turned toward the creature. The prison was not a structure. It was a mindscape. The humans we kept in the pods, they created a barrier within their dreams. Their collective minds shaped the cage that held this entity. Now that they are free. Ryan swallowed. You're saying someone has to take their place. The alien woman nodded. Ryan clenched his fists. And if no one does, her voice was quiet, then it will spread across the universe. Silence filled the chamber. Ryan exhaled slowly. This wasn't how he had imagined things would end. He had come here expecting to rescue lost humans. Instead, he had to make an impossible choice. The decision. The creature stared at him, waiting. Its voice slithered into his mind again. You cannot win. Only choose how you fall. Ryan gritted his teeth. He could run. He could try to fight. But deep down, he knew the truth. This wasn't a battle he could win. It was a battle he had to end. He looked at Davis. If I do this, get out of here. Tell Earth what happened. Davis's face twisted. Ryan. That's an order. Ryan snapped. Davis's fists clenched. Then, after a long moment, he nodded. Ryan turned to the alien woman. Tell me what I have to do. Her violet eyes held something strange. Not sadness, not relief. Just acceptance. The door is in your mind, she whispered. Ryan inhaled deeply. Then he stepped forward. Straight into the darkness. The final decision. Ryan stepped into the darkness, his heart pounding like war drums in his chest. The moment his foot crossed the threshold, the world around him vanished. No tunnel. No alien woman. No Davis. Just void. But he was not alone. The entity was there. It moved like a shadow, like liquid metal, shifting and twisting into different forms. Its glowing eyes flickered in the dark, watching him, studying him. You cannot contain me, it whispered. You are too small, too fragile. Ryan swallowed the lump in his throat. Then why do you sound afraid? The entity paused. For the first time, it hesitated. Ryan took a step forward. That Salkesh needed human minds to imprison you. That means you fear us. You fear what we can create. The shadows rippled, shifting violently, but Ryan stood his ground. The alien woman's voice echoed in his mind. The door is in your mind. Ryan closed his eyes and reached inward. He thought about Earth, about the first time he stared at the stars as a child, about his father, who told him humans were meant to explore, not fear the unknown. He thought about the team he had lost, the ones who had died believing in a mission that had brought them here. He thought about Mark, who had sacrificed himself so Ryan could live. And then, he created. The void around him shifted. The shadows trembled as Ryan's mind began to reshape the space. He wasn't just a prisoner here, he was a builder. Ryan opened his eyes. I am the door. The darkness exploded. The mindscape. Ryan wasn't in the void anymore. He was standing in an endless field of stars. But something was different. This place, it wasn't real. It was constructed. A mindscape, a prison that humans had unknowingly built for centuries. The entity stood across from him, its massive form writhing, struggling against the new reality Ryan had forced upon it. Ryan clenched his fists. I understand now. The Salkesh hadn't just needed human minds to contain this thing. They needed a leader, a warden strong enough to keep it locked away. Ryan had become that warden. The entity roared, its voice shaking the very fabric of the dream realm. You cannot hold me forever. Ryan's lips curled into a smirk. I don't have to. He reached into the mindscape, shaping it like clay, reinforcing the barriers, thickening the walls. He felt other minds, the ones who had come before him. The lost explorers, the trapped soldiers. They had all been part of this cage. Ryan called to them, and they answered. The air shimmered as dozens, hundreds, of human figures appeared beside him. Some wore old UEF uniforms, some were civilians, some were faces Ryan didn't recognize, but they were all there. Mark was among them. Ryan's breath caught. His old friend smirked. Took you long enough to figure it out. Ryan let out a short laugh. Better late than never. Together, They turned toward the entity. It screamed in defiance, thrashing against its cage, but the humans stood strong. Their collective minds, their shared will, was stronger than any single being could ever hope to be. The prison solidified, locking the creature inside once more. This time, it would never escape. Back in reality, Ryan's eyes snapped open. He gasped, his body jerking upright as if he had been drowning and had just surfaced for air. The chamber around him was in ruins. The hive core had been destroyed, its tendrils charred and lifeless. The glowing pods that had once held human prisoners were now dark and empty. The Salkesh woman knelt beside him. For the first time, her face showed relief. "You did it," she whispered. Ryan's throat was dry. He could still feel the echo of the mindscape inside him, the vastness of it stretching beyond time. The prison was still there. He could feel it, locked away deep within his thoughts. Davis was there too, staring at him in shock. "Ryan, are you?" Ryan exhaled slowly. "I'm alive." Davis let out a breathless laugh. "I thought you were gone, man." Ryan shook his head. "Not yet." But he had changed. He could feel it in his very bones. He had seen things no human had ever seen. He had become part of something greater. And yet, he was still here. The aftermath. Ryan rose to his feet, steady and strong. The alien woman stood beside him, her violet eyes full of something close to respect. "You are different now," she murmured. Ryan gave a tired smirk. "Yeah, feels that way." Davis motioned toward the tunnel. "We should go. The others need to know what happened." Ryan nodded. He turned to the alien woman. "What about you?" She hesitated. Then, "My people will not forget this." Ryan raised an eyebrow. "You mean they won't forgive it?" A flicker of something unreadable crossed her face. "Perhaps." Ryan sighed. "If they want revenge, tell them to think twice. We may not have dream tech, but humans don't go down easy." For the first time, she smiled. Ryan turned toward the exit, motioning for Davis to follow. "Come on. Let's go home." Davis hesitated. "And the thing? The entity?" Ryan glanced over his shoulder. "It's locked away." Davis frowned. "But for how long?" Ryan exhaled. "As long as I live." Davis looked uneasy, but he didn't argue. He just followed. As they walked toward the surface, Ryan felt the weight of the universe's deadliest secret sitting deep inside his mind. The prison was his to guard now. And for the rest of his life. He would never let it break free. Epilogue. A final warning. Months later, back on Earth, Ryan sat alone in his quarters. He hadn't spoken about what really happened on that planet. He couldn't. But sometimes, at night, when the world was quiet, he would hear a whisper in the back of his mind, a voice scratching at the edges of his thoughts. "You cannot keep me forever." Ryan would stare out at the stars, his grip tightening, and he would whisper back, "Watch me."